Good afternoon, folks. This video is going to deal with uh, how to research via the library databases. This material, incidentally, is also covered in the annotated bibliography assignment sheet in week 1. So there's a step-by-step process. I believe it's 13 steps, and I have pictures in there, screenshots from my cell phone when I did this process through my cell phone to guide you through that process. But this video is also going to guide you through the process. So the first thing that we're going to do is log into Jaguar as you normally would. Okay, so I'm doing that. Of course, it's going to send me the obligatory passcode notification, so let me take care of that. All right, so here we are. I'm going to go in under students so you can see what yours looks like. So student services. Once we're at student services, I believe it is under resources. What we're looking for is the library. Actually, you know what? There's an easier way to get here. So what I'm going to do is... Oh, here we go. Academic Support University Library. All right. So here we are, University Library. I think actually it's going to make us log in again, so we'll see how it goes. But what you want to do is you want to scroll down to the databases. So if you note over here, databases A to Z, this is where we want to go. And they've changed the look of this from previous semesters. Incidentally, as well, they've added for you some tutorials. So if you need some bolstering in terms of APA, MLA, aside from the resources that I've included for you or will be including for you, then you can look at those as well. But let's check out this databases A to Z. All right, so here we are in the databases, and there are 316 databases. That's pretty daunting. Now, you can search by subject and so on and so forth. But what I like to do, and I'll do this by way of demonstration, is this first database here is a very nice general database, and it is EBSCOhost, meaning that it has a certain uniform functionality that we'll take a look at. So go ahead and click on Academic Search Complete, and it is going to ask you to log in. So I'm going to log in, right? Right, log in. All right, so here we have our search fields and so on. So I'm just going to mirror the search that I did in the example on the assignment sheet. So looking for something timely, so I'm going to do COVID-19. Now, in some cases, this might be too timely. We'll talk about that. But honestly, because what we're dealing with is scholarly sources, and for better or worse, sometimes it takes a bit of time for scholarly material to make it to publication. So what do I mean when I say scholarly? The other term, the synonymous term, is peer-reviewed. I mean that material has been reviewed by experts associated with a given journal, such that those experts agree that this material is representative of the academic, the authoritative conversation going on in that journal. Now, this is not 100% foolproof. In other words, sometimes you can get information that gets in those journals that isn't the best. However, it's, analogously, it's like, wearing the N95 mask, to prevent the virus. Wearing the N95 mask is so much better than wearing the cloth mask and so forth, right? So not clicking scholarly on this, in essence, would be analogously like, using a cloth mask versus using an N95, right? Because the N95 will protect in various different ways, as opposed to the cloth mask, which is basically just a barrier protecting, a minimal barrier protecting other people from you, right? Everybody knows, hopefully, that the best precaution against COVID-19 exposure is social distance, even more so than the mask. Anyway, that analogy, maybe it's too soon for that analogy, but in any case, so clicking on scholarly, in other words, that is, the system itself is filtering out that material which has not been subjected to any sort of standard, right? And you want to look at material that has been subjected to some kind of authoritative standard, okay? So, but we'll get to that in just a second. So, I'm going to do COVID-19 and now my dirty little secret here is that I am a terrible speller, right? So you're noting that here. So anyway, I've filled out a couple of search terms. Now, I want to call your attention to these limiters here. Okay, most important limiters for us: full text, right? And as I was saying, scholarly. Okay. Now, under normal circumstances, I say normal, that normal is such a loaded term, it almost doesn't mean anything, right? Because normal according to whom, right? Or the quote-unquote new normal, what does that mean? Well, anyway. So, but under quite a few circumstances, you're going to have to limit your publication dates. So, for instance, you might do, a 3-year period, right? That's kind of a responsible period of time, because if you go back much further than that, then relevance to the conversation that you're looking at, the subject that you're looking at, may not apply. Right, it may not be as relevant unless you're looking for background information, or if it's a subject that hasn't necessarily been addressed directly as recently, then you can go back further. In the case of COVID-19, I'm not going to worry about that, because really we're looking at the last less than a year, honestly. Probably really September of 2019 is when COVID first kind of showed itself, right? So I'm not going to bother with the publication dates on this particular search, okay? But just note that if you are searching something, say for instance, marijuana legalization in Texas, right? If you were going to do that search, you would definitely probably want to limit it, say, within 3 to 5 years. But why? Because again, the conversation changes, and you want to have pertinent information, right? Okay, so we have our limiters checked and everything, so we can begin our search. So let's search, and also it's also a pretty good idea to go ahead and click PDF full text, although that's not entirely 100% necessary, but you can click that. Most of these are going to be and actually there's some new ones here that there's a new one here that wasn't there the last couple times that I've done this search. So I'm going to look at this one, because the second one, because that's the one I used as an example in the in the document, okay, in your document. So I'm going to click on this, right? And so I want to call your attention to a couple of things. And again, I'm doing this on a desktop. If I was doing this on a phone, I would have to click over here on the side, and this material would pop out. Okay, but because I'm doing it on a desktop, actually I'm doing it on a Surface Pro, but because I'm doing it on a wider screen, right? This is already there, but otherwise you would have to make it pop out. So just to take a look at what we have here in this on this page. First of all, let's look at the subject terms. So what I always tell students is, students will come to me and say, well, I can't find information on such and such subjects. The reason 9 times out of 10 that someone cannot find information on a certain subject is because that person has not chosen adequate search terms or appropriate search terms. These subject terms are going to give you additional search terms that you can use to find information on that particular document or relevant to that particular document, right? So keep that in mind, all right? Also, right here, we have this abstract. Now, an abstract is essentially important, particularly for the sort of quick and dirty type of research that you're doing. We've only basically got 2 weeks in which to do this research because, again, this is a summer class, and we are moving at kind of an accelerated pace, for better or worse. So anyway, what the abstract does is it provides you the subject of the article so that you can read the abstract and basically gather what the subject is without having to read the whole article, right? Now, in this case, this is a rather brief article, okay? So you could conceivably read the whole thing. But if you're looking at an article that's, say, 20 pages, right, you do not want to delve into a 20-page article, no matter how great that information is, unless you know that that information is going to be useful to you, right? So the abstract accomplishes that. Now, please, 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 please do not cut and paste from the abstract and put that in your annotated bibliography. That is plagiarism, and you don't want to do that. But definitely use the abstract as a tool when doing your research so that, if the article is going to be relevant to you. Now, over here on the side, here's the PDF in full text. If you wanted to glance at the article now, you could. I do want to point out some of these options on the side here. So you have this cite button. This is my favorite feature, okay? So say I'm going to be using APA citation for your annotated bibliography. Students always ask me, and this is a very pertinent question, right? What citation system should I be using? Well, the question is, in terms of that, is what citation system is appropriate for your audience? Okay, if your audience are social scientists, for example, or scientists and so on and so forth, then the appropriate citation system, probably 9 times out of 10, okay, is going to be APA. MLA is useful if you're dealing with people who are, literary scholars and so on and so forth, or if, you just if your audience is high school students, for example, and you could argue that the only citation system to which they've been exposed junior and senior years of high school was MLA, so therefore you want to use MLA because they would recognize it. That's viable, okay? But long story short, is that the appropriate citation system is contingent upon your audience. Okay. Now, I would ask that if, as a research community group, you are investigating a research area, right? That all of you use the same citation system. So if you decide collectively as a group to use APA, please, everybody use APA. The reason being is it'd be easier for you to share sources that way. Okay. And again, I may have mentioned this. I think I did mention this in my syllabus document, syllabus video, rather briefly. Everyone's doing their own annotated bibliography, so everyone has to have 10 sources. However, you could do umbrella research such that you'd end up with, allowing for some overlap, 36 to 40 sources, give or take, under the same umbrella topic. So you could kind of exchange sources and have that as kind of a library, research bank upon which to draw for your other projects. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit, but when developing your research question, you want to think of a general umbrella research topic or research question, and then underneath that, each individual person within your group will want to take a particular focused view, right? So, for example, this particular piece deals primarily with quarantine, so you might have somebody looking at, so you might, if you were doing the COVID-19, you might generally be looking at quarantine and COVID-19, but you could have somebody be looking at the social aspects, the psychological aspects. You could have somebody be looking at the economic impact, you could have somebody be looking at the political implications, and so on and so forth, right? The idea is to each person's kind of take a more focused view, right? As far as the materials in the annotated bibliography. Now, sometimes that doesn't work out as beautifully as we would like it, particularly, as I was saying, in the case of something like COVID-19, because it is so immediate, right? As a matter of fact, when I started preparing these documents a couple weeks ago, it was the most immediate and relevant topic. Now, of course, topics such as civil disobedience and police brutality and so on have become, and systemic racism and so forth have eclipsed that, at least at present in the consciousness of our nation, and rightfully so. We've got some very serious issues with which we are contending, and which we will continue to contend on through to November and so on and so forth, right? So yeah, but yeah, so the stuff out there, right, on COVID and so forth, it's fairly recent. So there's going to be more probably overlap on the sources in that, okay? Anyway, let me show you. So with this here, if I'm using APA, I just kind of scroll, and here's my APA reference, right? I just scroll, and here's the APA reference. That's pretty easy, right? Now, conceivably, you could cut and paste this, right, to create your, and this is the bibliographic entry portion that would show up on your works cited page for an essay, or in the entry portion of an annotated bibliography, the bibliographic entry portion of an annotated bibliography entry, right? Note that it has the hanging indent. This is punctuated, formatted correctly, okay? Now, what it also allows you to do, okay, if I come over here and I click email, what this will allow you to do is email this to yourself. So I would just type in my email address and put a subject in here. Make sure this is correct. Clicked. The one thing that you want to remember with this is you've got to go in and select the citation format that you want. Okay. So again, I would select APA if I'm doing APA, and if all that's correct, I can click send, and it will send me an email with the citation in it, like I showed you, as well as with the PDF attached. So again, I could save that PDF to a cloud. I could, open that PDF on my hard drive, and so on and so forth. Okay. So, and again, you can play around with some of these other functions as well. Okay. Again, I can't emphasize enough the importance of doing your research and doing it early, right? So I would actually advise you to begin this research process, Monday or Tuesday, i.e. June the 6th, June the 8th or June the 9th. I would advise you to really begin that then, because for one, you might be talking in your discussion group and people come up with a couple ideas, but you really don't know what's potentially viable until you start looking in the databases and seeing what the sources are, right? Seeing what's out there. Because you don't want to be stuck in a situation where you're looking at a topic and try as you might, you can only find 5 sources on it total, right? Okay. Now, there is such a thing as tangential research, right? So, for example, if you are doing COVID-19, okay, and you want to look at psychological aspects of that may be present or prevalent in the COVID-19 epidemic, with people in the COVID-19 epidemic, you won't necessarily be able to find so much directly related to COVID-19, but you could find stuff on psychological implications or impact of isolation, right? You could find stuff on fear, right? You could find stuff on, and so on and so forth. So you can do research connected to areas to which you can draw connection, right, to COVID-19 and what's been going on, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to directly connect with COVID-19 in the traditional sense, in the direct sense, but you have to draw those connections. If you're going to do it that way, you have to draw those connections. Again, please reach out to me if you have any questions in this regard, any questions with regard to the research process and so on, right? I appreciate it, and I'll be back with you with another video pretty quickly. Thanks a lot.